Hello and welcome to Focus. Just 3 months ago, the spotlight was on South Africa, hosts of the 2010 Footballing World Cup. But now, after the crowds and excitement have gone, the country is counting the cost of holding one of the world's most prestigious competitions. Unable to fill the seats and unable to pay the running costs, the purpose-built, state-of-the-art stadiums are now lying empty. Our correspondents have been to find out more about this worrying legacy.
It sits like an ocean liner run aground, imposing and majestic and hopelessly empty. The Cape Town Stadium came with a €400 million price tag, but is already a failed venture. The French company who's managed the stadium since January has pulled out of its proposed 30-year lease agreement before it even came into effect.
And as painful as I say as it is, we would be irresponsible not to face up to this reality. And yes, we made mistakes in the cost assumptions and income opportunities of the stadium.
The adjoining park and parking lots are meant to fall under stadium management, but the maintenance costs are too high. Local sports teams are hesitant to sign on with the stadium. Premier Soccer League Ajax Cape Town rarely sells 10,000 seats to a match, 4,000 short of breaking even.
If you have a long-term vision, you can make it work. If you're looking at short-term gain, you have no chance of making it work.
With Stade de France pulling out and local teams dragging their heels, the city must step in and take over. This is a heavy burden for a parliamentary capital already suffering a World Cup financial backlash. The hotels are as empty as the stadium. Cape Town and several other South African cities are starting to sound the alarm.
There are these major potential maintenance issues that municipalities are going to have to face, and we think that the national government, who's part of putting those stadia up, have to take some responsibility in that regard.
The government is hanging on to their World Cup optimism. The tournament may have cost more than €3 billion, but prestige has no price tag.
It is estimated that 500 million viewers around the world watched the opening ceremony. That was most powerful marketing opportunity for this young democracy. It was worth every penny spent on the tournament.
And the invoices are still coming in. The police, for example, are waiting for their paychecks from provincial governments. Paychecks for the hundreds of mandatory overtime hours worked to secure these very stadiums, once teeming with fans.
Well, our correspondent Nicholas Koch is in Johannesburg and he joins me now. Just put this into context for us, please, Nicholas. How serious is this World Cup hangover?
In terms of the stadia, I think it is quite serious because, for a start, it was predicted. It's a problem that has affected big host nations of major sporting events in the past. South Africa isn't the first in this situation, but there certainly do seem to be quite a few white elephants built around the country. Whether Cape Town's Greenpoint Stadium is one of them is open to discussion. I would think there's a bit of bargaining and negotiating going on at the moment. Stade de France pulling out of the management side, but maybe others will see this as an opportunity to extract more support from the provincial and city government, but also from the national government.
I'm also joined here in the studio by Philip Shiner, an independent consultant on South Africa here in France. Welcome to France 24. You heard what our correspondent had to say. Do you agree with the gravity of the situation?
I think that South Africa's viewpoint was let's do a successful FIFA World Cup and then we'll see afterwards. I think the reality is probably slightly different. In fact, only 5 stadiums were built, 5 were modified. So in fact, we're talking about 5 new stadiums, which maintenance costs have to be provided. The second thing is that in the long term, it looks very much as if rugby is probably going to take over the stadiums. The problem with Cape Town is, of course, that it has the Newlands Rugby Stadium. And the Rugby Federation of South Africa do not want to close down the Newlands Stadium to move to the FIFA World Cup Stadium. There's an old guard, there's a new guard in this federation. People are saying, no, we've got to get rid of the Newlands Rugby Stadium. It's old. FIFA wouldn't let them use it for the World Cup. So there is this question, of course, of transferring...
But surely this should have been addressed before we got to this situation of where officials are admitting mistakes were made.
Yes, because I think that South Africa was so glad to get the FIFA World Cup. They said yes, and I think that probably they bargained not for a lot of these hitches afterwards. The other problem, of course, is that, and as you say, the FIFA World Cup stadium was not built according to certain specifications of other sports federations. For example, they don't have enough hospitality boxes, so they can't get in enough clients, corporate clients, which often pay for these.
Do you think FIFA should have been more supportive when it came to organising the World Cup in South Africa?
Well, it's very clear that they treated South Africa very much like they would treat any other nation. For example, things like beer. Only FIFA sponsors could sell beer, this being Budweiser, in the stadiums, whereas South Africa is an enormous producer of beer. They could have been selling their own beer in the stadiums. FIFA didn't take this into account. FIFA could have agreed that South Africa, for a semi-final for a World Cup, that they use the Newlands Stadium, but they demanded that they build a newer, bigger stadium for this semi-final in Cape Town.
We also touched on in our report the fact that police are still waiting to be paid for all the overtime. We've also heard about hotels that are now lying empty. What are the wider implications of the World Cup on South Africa now it's over?
As regards the hotels, this is not the season when Cape Town hotels are full. Cape Town hotels are full in December, January, February, March, and I think that they will be full. In fact, in reality, Cape Town didn't build a lot of new hotels for the FIFA World Cup, and they were very careful to accommodate a lot of tourists outside of South Africa, in Zimbabwe, in countries like Zambia, Botswana, and flew them into the matches. There were tourists on ocean liners. There were people who came for a camping experience. So a lot of these things didn't create white elephants which wouldn't be used after that.
Now, you mentioned with regard to the stadiums that the rugby may move into the stadium that we featured in our report in Cape Town. But overall, has South Africa benefited from holding the World Cup? Is this all doom and gloom?
No, I think that in general the attitude of South Africans is totally positive, that the experience was incredibly positive for South Africa. They had something like 350,000 visitors. I think that most of them were in South Africa for the first time. 90% of them said they'd come back to South Africa. The benefits were very equally spread. It wasn't just Cape Town, Johannesburg. It was 9 or 10 different centers, so many different cities benefited. It got the government working together with the private sector. It got political enemies working together. These are all very important things in South Africa, and I think it probably just gave the world another view of this country and shows that it really is a can-do country.
Okay, Philip China, thank you very much indeed for joining us. That's all we have time for in this edition of Focus. Thanks for watching. Bye-bye.